Hey, what's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me. In today's video, it's going to be a quick one. I want to address a question I get from time to time, and people always ask about it. And it's actually a really good question, so I'm just going to read it. It was a comment I got on my video on handling paint on the palette. And that is, Brett says, great video, quick question. I see a lot of people dip their brush into a well to get some pigment, but their brush is not clean and has other color in it. They end up with dirty wells. It seems like common practice. Does this reduce the effect of a pigment? If so, at what point do you have to clean it out and replace the paint? So a very common question about contamination of wells, basically. I will answer it real quick, just like this, face to face, and then I'll demonstrate this. But basically, it's all about ratios. So when you go over from, let's say, a blue well onto a yellow well, yes, you're going to contaminate that yellow, but a couple of things to have in mind. First, the question of ratios. How much yellow are you going to pick up? Because if you'll pick up enough yellow, it will will play against that blue. So all you need really is to just pick back enough yellow to beat the blue that you have on the brush on the mix. Of course, you can take a break and clean your brush a bit. Sometimes in the midst of battle, it's not easy to do, and you kind of work really fast from one well to another. But it is a good practice to sometimes clean it. But even if you clean it, the water may be a bit contaminated. The paper may even have a bit of paint on it. It will mix with your perfect, beautiful yellow. So the bottom line for me is it's not worth the effort to always clean. You can, in theory, have a separate brush for every paint and just use one brush for that yellow, one brush for that blue, and really be meticulous and clean them and mix them separately. But a part of the beauty of watercolor is that it does mix together. And there's something very organic for when there's a touch of blue in your yellow and there's a touch of red in your blue and so on. It looks really nice in my opinion. But again, you could make that complete separation and get a very pure, clean color. To me personally, it's not worth it because it's just a question of how much yellow do I need to overpower that blue or red leftovers from the previous place we touched. Now, there is another point I want to add to that, and that is something that is not really often discussed, and that is a well of paint. It's basically dried paint. It's just tons of layers of paint, right? Now, I do believe there's a difference if you just pour the paint in and let it dry on the palette, as opposed to how they make pens ready, watercolor pens. I think in watercolor pens, they put a thin layer, let it fully dry, then put another thin layer, let it fully dry, another. And what this creates is a much stronger and robust structure. That's at least in my experience. Whereas if you just pour the paint in from a tube, it may be a little soft, even on the inside, even after it dries a bit. It will dry on the outside, but stay a bit moist and soft on the inside. So a well is different that way. And what this means is when you dig through the well, remember, you always reach new layers of dried paint that is pure. So let's say you're digging into your yellow well with a bit of blue on your brush, right? And there's like maybe 20 layers. And so you dig through one and you contaminate it, but underneath it is a new clean layer. And you just dig through it a bit, and that's the layer that helps you overpower the blue. Okay, so two things to remember here. One, it's a question of ratios, and it's a question of effort. Are you willing to separate your brushes, separate your mixing wells to have a water well, maybe even for cools and for warms, which is perfectly fine if that's what you're into. It's a question of ratios, and then ultimately it is a matter of understanding that the pens, usually, especially if you buy it as a pen, they're built in layers, so there will always be pure paint underneath it, which is why it's not such a big deal. Now let me show you this to you real quick on the table. It's a really quick demo. I just want to show you kind of face to face. So here we are, and sorry about the bit of a messy desk. There's a lot that went on today. Had a lot of things to do. So I just want to show you, let's go worst case scenario. Let's say I want to paint using this yellow here, which is, if I'm not mistaken, Indian yellow by White Knights. And whoops, I dipped my brush into some French ultramarine. What am I to do? So I'm going to use that to bring out the yellow, and I'm going to use the well that is already full of blue. Okay, so usually I will dip into the water, and my water bucket is right here, just off camera. But usually I'll just give it a quick, I'm gonna move some stuff. I'm gonna give it a quick dip, but nothing more than that, right? And I still have this full, and there is still a bit of blue on my, sorry, I have tons of stuff on my desk. I still have a bit of blue on my brush. I don't care. So dip it into that nickel azo yellow. Ooh, it's a terrible green, right? Bring more water, get more paint, and look at how fast this just overpowers whatever blue was there. So it's just a question of digging through the well. Now, do you want to do it? Is it effective to do it? Of course, sometimes it will be effective if you're having a really terrible color here. Sometimes it will be effective to simply come here with like a paper towel or something like that and just go like this. It's not that hard, right? And people always make fun of me for that. It's not that hard, so you can do it. But when you're in the midst of it again and you're painting and you have a bazillion things to think about, sometimes it's much easier to reach into that well, and then it's not such a big deal. I hope this quick demo makes sense. So yeah, once again, I hope this quick demo makes sense. It's just really about all these couple of things I talked about. It actually all comes down to the water to paint ratio. That's the one thing that will always lead the watercolor painting process. The better of an understanding you can develop of that, the better you'll become at painting. It has to come at first very consciously, and later on it will develop more on a more intuitive level. That's the basic for me. You know, of course there are other basic skills. Learn your drawing, learn your values, learn the theory behind why things look right or don't look right. Painting digitally is actually a great tool for that, because tools are not at all a roadblock in any way. When you work digitally, you can just choose whatever color you want, whatever value you want, and you can get an instant result. But if you want to translate it to a skill that is physical, which is watercolor, you have to physically do stuff. Other than the knowledge, you really do have to practice this over and over and over. And I cannot stress enough, I see people, I follow people. The people who follow the process and try and learn about that water to color, water to paint ratio, that magical thing that's the main thing that is important in watercolor, they get magical results. You see how their wet and wet improves better than me. If you're gonna focus on it for a month or two, you'll blast right past me, because I'm not working too much on wet and wet, though I should work on it more. But you just see it in the subtle touch. It's something that comes with time. And you really have to work on it and focus on it. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed this quick video. Don't forget to check out my frustration-free watercolor course if you want to learn how to paint like me. Enjoy the process, let go, get the result you want, understand the basic techniques. Be sure to check that out. I'm really making real advances in my watercolor realism course. I wanted to get it out by Christmas. No way I'm going to be able to do that, I think, but you know, whatever. And I do want to remind you one more thing. I'm doing a site-wide gallery-wide promo kind of promotion for November on the gallery. So if you want to get any painting for 20% off, as many as you want, there is no limitation. Just go there, check it out. All the links in the description box below. 20% off. There will probably also be a Christmas discount and a couple of others, but just keep your head out if you want to get a painting. So this is it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you watching. We'll talk to you again real soon.